Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek podcast. I am Frank Hernandez, your Pest Geek, here discussing all things pest. We want to remind our audience to join in on the revolution. That's right, join in on the conversation, be part of the society. Pest Geek Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook. And we're on YouTube. We're on the web, pestgeekpodcast.com. Check out there the notes, everything that we put into the podcast. They're all on there. And here is Stephen Van Tassel with today's topic.
Thanks, Frank. Stephen Van Tassel here, wildlife control consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife for all you Pest Geek fans out there. So thanks so much for listening. Hey, today I wanted to talk a little bit about trail cameras. Trail cameras, now that the price has dropped on a lot of them, as well as the size of the cameras and the quality has certainly gone up. It's certainly undergone a technological revolution. It's certainly something that you may want to consider when you're doing your work with pest control, and particularly in my field of wildlife control, that you may want to add to your arsenal. Trail cameras can do a lot for you. So let's talk a little about some of the advantages that they can do. One, they're taking pictures for you when you can't be there. One of the things that's so true about dealing with wildlife or pests in general is that they're never doing what you want them to do when you're all prepared for them to do it. And who has time to be sitting in the blind all day waiting for an animal to do certain things? So in that regard, there are some advantages with using trail cameras because they can take pictures during the day and take pictures at night, and they're motion activated, and some of the quality of the photos can be quite good if you want to spend the money for that level of quality and you have good placement where there's good action. But even on a lower level, they can be very helpful to identify problems, that those small number of cases where you're just not sure what the heck is going on with that particular site. One of the challenges we have with wildlife control, and I'm sure with pest control too, but to a lesser extent, is that customers lie. I mean, let's be honest about it. They just lie. And sometimes you're hired by one person, let's say the manager of a company, and he wants animal X removed, but the workers underneath him or her don't, because they're treating it like a corporate pet. This is certainly the case when it comes to things like cats, and so this is a dilemma that we can have where there may be free-range cats or feral cats inside of a facility, and the manager doesn't want them there. No one owns them, or they brought them from home, or you know how these things are. No one really wants to take responsibility, but no one wants to get rid of them either. Manager wants them gone. Hires your company to remove them. You're setting up cage traps to remove the cats, and you just can't seem to catch one. And the bait's gone, or the trap's closed, the trap gets moved, and no one knows who's doing it. And so what you can do is set up some trail cameras and find that individual or individuals who are messing with your traps, because most states have laws against the disturbance of traps. Now, when it comes to feral cats, as you may remember a podcast I did earlier about this, you may want to go back to it, but I'm just using that as an illustration of when you have people manipulating your traps. This could be raccoons. You could have the same problem with raccoons, where people are feeding the animals and aren't wanting you to remove them. If you're dealing with an apartment area and the owner or landlord wants the raccoons removed, but the residences don't, or some of the residences don't. And all of a sudden your traps are being destroyed, they're being moved, they're being disturbed, animals are being let out, and all of a sudden now you have a situation where there's a trap-wise raccoon, and you have to now ratchet things up a little bit to capture that animal now that he's educated. So other times, however, you find that the trail camera can be helpful when you just don't know what is going on. What is exactly happening? There's been some interesting work being done by some people who are doing rodent control, like rats and things, where they're actually putting up trail cameras and finding out how are the rats interacting with their rat traps. How are they interacting in certain places? Are they actually being moving? Why aren't they getting the kind of control that they thought they should be getting? And sometimes it's used as a learning experience where you're finding out what exactly is causing the problem. Is it a fact that is it a rodent? Is it something else? So you can do a lot of different things with these cameras in the sense that they can help you identify what exactly is going on, what animal is there, or animals, I should be plural here. We can't rush to judgment in terms of a specific animal. Could be more than one. But also to identify and understand better about animal behavior. How are those animals interacting with your equipment? And that can be useful in terms of worker training, or when you're in a situation where animals are starting to break the rules and they're not following the normal process of how they're interacting with your traps or equipment. So let's reiterate what those three elements are again for the advantages of using trail cameras. Number one, it can help you identify people that are molesting with your equipment. Number two, it can help you identify what animal actually is present at the location. And then third, what that animal is doing. So you have some tremendous opportunities with the proper use of trail cameras. Let me give you a fourth element for the advantages of trail cameras. That is, sometimes you can find some glamour shots. You can get some photos, sometimes even some video that can be useful for the marketing of your company. One of my constant drumbeats for the wildlife control community is take photos, take photos, take photos, take photos. And I beg, I plead, I cajole, I try to humiliate, anything to get guys to just take a couple of seconds out of their day and take some photos. You should be taking photos of some of the work you're doing because of liability issues, particularly when you're doing repair type work or you're working in areas where there's been roof work done, things that are high liability. You should be taking before and after photos. But you should also be taking photos that are going to be helping you advertise and market your business, both to your clients and to the larger world around you. Stop stealing photos off the internet. There are plenty of people that are willing to sell you uses of your photos. Sometimes they'll even let you use it if you ask, but stop stealing photos from people. This is why I've gotten to a point where I'm really starting to watermark a lot of my photos, but I digress. Get your own photos or take a little bit of time. And you find out one of the things that I hope people get when they're learning how to take photos is how much work is actually involved. You think it's just a click of a shutter. It's not. There's a lot more going on. But using a trail camera can certainly help you get some of that footage that may be useful for your advertising work. It can also be useful for your internal training work. So what are you going to look for when you're getting this trail camera? A couple of things you want to keep in mind. Watch your price point. As a general rule, not always, but as a general rule, the more you pay for your camera, the more features you're going to get. Now, that being said, do you really need the high level end of these trail cameras? Do you really need research quality trail cameras? And the chances are you don't. But if you do want that, then you want to be able to spend the price, and you may be getting up into the $200, $300, $400 range of cameras. But for the vast majority of uses out there, you can find cameras. Sometimes you can find them on special for a couple cameras for $100, a couple cameras for $150, and get something that's decent, suitable for your needs, that's going to get the job done. And if it gets stolen or someone takes a baseball bat to it, it's not the end of the world. Now, notice I'm not going to be talking about telephone or cell phone capable or wireless capable trail cameras. We're just talking about your run-of-the-mill trail cameras that takes the camera and puts the photos and puts it on an SD drive, SD disk. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what are you looking for? Number one, you want to try to find a camera that's going to be a fast shutter speed. You want, once that motion sensor has been triggered, you want that camera to fire quickly because the animals don't stay still a lot of times. In nature, a lot of times being still means death. You're going to be captured, you're going to be spotted, so you're going to be moving. So you want something that's going to be down to about a half second or less. Now, can you get away with other things? Sure, especially if you're dealing with a situation where you have a trail camera in front of a trap, for instance. Obviously, the animal is going to be hanging around the trap. You don't need a wicked fast shutter speed. Okay. But if you're trying to catch animals in motion, they're going by a location. Let's say you're trying to see if coyotes are following a particular trail or if raccoons are using a particular route, then you're going to need something fast because the animal's not stopping in front of the camera. He's moving on through. So you need a fast shutter speed. Number two, you should be getting a camera that obviously takes color photos during the day and then black and white images at night. As a general rule, that's a pretty low ask. Most of your cameras are going to have that. The question now is, how many megapixels are you going to need or want in that particular camera? Now, let's be clear here. When you're talking about image size, generally, the more data that's gathered by that camera, the better the quality of the picture because you're able to blow it up. Think of it like the way I talk about it is I talk about an image being grains of sand. Now, if you have 12,000 grains of sand, you're going to make a bigger picture than if you have 6,000 grains of sand. But there comes a point when how big of a photo do you really need? Are you looking to make a wall poster or are you just looking for a 3x5? All right. Generally speaking, a 3 megapixel photo can go a long way for what most people are going to be using a photo for. Clearly, if you have a 6 megapixel camera, you're going to be able to do a little bit more and you have a little bit of wiggle room. But remember, megapixels only tell you part of the equation, the quality of the camera itself. What kind of lens do you have? What is the angle of the lens? How good is the flash? How far away will it shine? Those are all elements of the camera as well. So you can get a 6 megapixel piece of garbage, right? If the camera lens isn't very good. So balance that out a little bit and realize that do you really need a 12 megapixel camera? And understand the more megapixels you're taking, the bigger the SD card you're going to need. And so because they can fill up faster than you think. Consider the kind of whether you need blackout infrared or not. Blackout infrared should be your default choice because it's going to be when it shines at night, when it shines that infrared beam at night to illuminate the subject, the animal won't see the light. Some animals are able to see that infrared light going off. And humans can sometimes, if you're looking at a camera carefully and you see it flash, sometimes you'll see a little red glow from it. That's something you don't want because it can also be someone will pick up your camera at nighttime and be able to steal it faster. So you want blackout if you can. But understand, if you know that you're going to be using your camera inside secure areas like attics, inside fenced-in areas, do you really need blackout? Because you're going to pay a little bit more for that. Do you really need it? And chances are no, you don't need it. So again, you may have your lower end cameras that are going to be, used in maybe higher risk areas, and maybe your higher end cameras where you're going to be a little more secure. Or you can say, look, I'm going to use my blackout camera in places where it's more likely to be stolen because it will be less visible to people walking by at night. Keep in mind those particular elements, and size obviously is going to matter in terms of how it's eased. It's sometimes helpful to have cameras of the same type of brand Some good brands that may be out there. One that I've heard of is Moultrie is pretty good. I'm trying to remember the type of game camera that I've used that I've had pretty good success with, but the name of it escapes me. My apologies. But the reality is that there's chances are you can talk to your friends and you're going to get into a little bit. But you only need a few. I mean, unless you're going to go hog wild on this, you really only need 2 or 3 to get you going. You don't have to spend a ton of money on doing it. Look for some sales. A lot of times around Christmas time, maybe as the fall gets closer, you're going to see some sales. And sometimes you can find used ones at tag sales and garage sales where you something to play around with. It's one of those things. Choose good batteries. The batteries I can speak to, and that is the lithium. The lithium batteries are really good. I like the Energizer Lithium Maxim, Ultimate Lithium batteries, like the AA's. You'll get the Ultimate Lithium Energizer batteries. They're really good, last a long time. You're paying a little bit of a premium for them, to be sure. But again, you don't want the thing running out. And they can be really good. All right, let's talk about camera use. How are you going to use this camera? Well, a couple of things you need to keep in mind. Number one, you want to place the camera so that it's not going to be facing the rising sun or the setting sun. Ideally, you want it facing a northerly direction so it's not going to get blinded by the rising sun or the setting sun. Obviously, that's an ideal. Can't always happen, but you need to think about where is that sun coming from, because if the sun's in the wrong place, it's just going to white out your camera. Number two, locate your camera in a place with a clear line of sight. I can't begin to tell you how frustrating it is to place your camera in location and all you get is hundreds of images of moving grass because I live in windy areas. There is moving grass, there's a branch there, and it keeps firing your camera, and all you do is fill up your disk with a bunch of junk. Definitely keep that in mind. And then finally, you need to think about security for your camera. Place it, you want to be sure it's camouflage sufficient so it doesn't stand out like a beacon. This is a little hard in the wintertime because people can follow your snow tracks to a camera location. So definitely keep that in mind. But you want it, for most wildlife controllers, you want to put it high so someone has to climb something to get to it, or hide it in such a way that it's not going to be easy for someone to identify and locate and steal on you. Lock it down. Some cameras come with some pretty good security, and so if someone wants to steal it, they're going to have to bring some clippers and try to hack the way through the cable and that sort of thing, and that can be helpful in reducing that type of a risk. Think legalities here as well. I didn't mention that yet, but let's talk a little bit about legalities. Some states, like my state of Montana, does not allow the use of trail cameras that are going to help you track big game. Now, for most of our purposes in wildlife control, that shouldn't be a problem, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. Can someone accuse you of saying, hey, you're out here in the woods, you're taking pictures because you want to get pictures of that big game so you can then shoot it when it comes hunting season time? That is something you want to keep in the back of your mind, making sure that you have appropriate legalities. You might want to have a clause in your contract when you're talking with your client that say, hey, I may be using cameras here. And so you want to be sure that you're not taking photos of situations and things that could be, let's say, a little awkward for your client. And it's certainly going to be something when you're dealing with a criminal activity on your trap as well. You might want to just sort of make sure your bases are covered on that, because you might get in trouble for that. Because remember, just because something is legal doesn't make it wise. And sometimes we think something is working, but it may be illegal. So definitely keep those elements in mind. Trail cameras can be an important tool in your toolbox, but again, they're just a tool, and they can help you get some photos of interesting animal behavior, interesting video type work. And the cameras today have certainly come a long way, both in terms of their functionality and the lower price. Something to keep in the back of your mind. particularly when you're dealing with that job that's just been a pain in the butt and you're not sure what the heck is going on. Our trail camera can help resolve the questions that you have in mind. Hey, would love feedback from you. If you have an idea, a topic that you would like to have covered here in the Living the Wild Life as part of the Pest Geek podcast, drop me an email. My email is wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Wildlifecontrolconsultant @gmail.com. You can get a hold of me. Love to hear from you. Get some feedback if you have a topic. I'm also looking for individuals and businesses who are interested in having an interview. Love to interview. Reach out to me. We could talk and market some things. Otherwise we'll just keep talking about what I like to talk about, and that may not be what you need out in the field. Would love to get your feedback. So definitely think about how you can help move this forward, because we're trying to make this an informative program for you out in the field so we can build that Pest Geek world. Hey, thanks for your time. I'm Stephen Van Tassel, Wildlife Control Consultant. Back to you, Frank.
We hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Until next time, have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.